what happens when you just look at like a entire planet of people who are, at least prior to this pandemic, they weren't dancing, but they were getting in cars and driving to an office where they would sit in a cubicle next to a person that they would only see if they were going to use the bathroom or have lunch.
Yep.
And they might, maybe a few times a week, they would have meetings where their bodies would all gather together and they would say things that they could easily have just said over a computer. And on top of that, there was a superstition attached to it, a kind of religious sentimentality related to their meetings and meeting culture, as it's called, so that they would think to themselves, there's no way that this can be as effective if we don't get our physical bodies next to each other. And now, at least, what we're finding is actually it still fucking works. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where the voice is. There needs to be a voice of someone being like, wait a minute. So you mean the last 15 years of my life where I've been driving 2 hours in and 2 hours out in thick fucking traffic to get my body next to other bodies, that was just a symbolic gesture to satiate some lunatic CEO's superstitious idea that human bodies need to be next to each other if we're going to be productive? So like all those 2 hours, me being away from my family, all that shit was completely unfucking necessary just because some power hungry fucking CEO. It's the same thing as believing in witchcraft. It's the same thing believing the witches are souring the milk. Only in this case, to this day, you have like, I think it was a Microsoft CEO lamenting the inability to have in-person meetings. And it's like that lament, that if, you wanted to hear the sound of COVID, that's what it sounds like. You know what I mean? Some fucking guy who's making $1 million, $10 million a month or whatever he's making saying, I need the bodies of my workers together in the same space so they can smell my fucking pheromones as I control them.
I think the last 3 minutes of your speech is one of the greatest rants I've ever heard. And by the way, in a comedic kind of way, but also in a very literal kind of way. It's exactly what I've been thinking for even before the pandemic, to be honest. It was one of the things where it's like a lot of the shit that we're doing just makes no sense. This idea that people, granted, there are jobs that you need to do in person, for sure. But there are plenty of those that, so many jobs that don't need it. And so your 3-minute rant or whatever long it was should be published on every news media, should be the top video on YouTube, because I think it's absolutely key to shaping the kind of stuff we're going to be doing in the future. Because you're right. I mean, the stuff that this idea of everybody getting into their metal box to drive to a cubicle somewhere, to be miserable away from their family, it just makes no sense. It's something that never made sense. It may have made sense in pre-internet days where you did need to type something out and physically hand it to somebody and be right there. But post-internet has been completely ridiculous. It's one of the things that I think has existed because people who went through it wanted other people to... It's almost like hazing, right? It's like, I had to deal with this shit. So now you're going to. What, you think you're going to work at home? You think you're going to be on the beach typing away while you're playing with your kids? Hell no. You need to come to the office and suffer the same way I did.
That's right. You better not be in fucking bed, by the way. If you're doing your Zoom meetings, you better not be in bed.
Yeah.
You've got to be at least looking like you're That's the other piece of it. These people are having to do shit like comb their hair and stuff for the Zoom meeting to symbolically give some indication that they're still adhering to this ancient ritual, which is pointless. But there was a point. You're absolutely right. In the era of file cabinets, we needed to, have people taking printed out shit from office to office to hand to people. But we're just not in that age anymore. And man, to me, hopefully, this is something I deeply hope is that folks who have experienced no reduction in productivity And it's going to be the responsibility of the CEOs. They've got to abandon their superstitious qualities. They have to let go of it. They have to admit to themselves, you can just secretly admit it to yourself, that part of the reason you wanted to have meetings is because you are a fucking lonely megalomaniac and you just felt powerful in your meetings. Like that was it. You needed that feeling because, you know, whatever, it didn't work out for you in your personal life. And so that to me is like, you just have to acknowledge like, oh shit, damn, I didn't mean to like, I was acting like some kind of king or something. I'm not a king. I'm just a person who got lucky and worked hard and has a cool job. But man, I shouldn't be torturing my fellow human beings. And I think the workers, I really hope, at the very least, fight tooth and nail for the right to work from home.
Yep.
And that not only fight tooth and nail, but fight tooth and nail to be paid more for working from home. Because if we reduce office space, then the workers should be making extra money because the CEOs and the are no longer going to have to pay exorbitant amounts for commercial real estate.
Correct.
And so, and still, this is what I'm hoping is like the big businesses like Twitter who are like leading the way in this regard. I think they're going to see there's a profit there to be made too, while empowering their workers. And then I'm done after this, and I'm sorry.
No, it was perfect. I love it.
We have to open up the space for workers if they want to get together and work in the old way to do that too, because some people do not have the ability to work from home.
Sure.
Because they don't live in a place. That's a huge privilege if you can do that.
Yep.
So we, you know, there has to also be a non-shaming, complete invitation for workers to come work in a you know, probably a less expansive office space, you know, because that's the truth. Some people just can't work from home. They've got like roommates and shit. They don't have an internet connection. Their neighbors are loud. They can't concentrate, or they just like work.
Yep.
They like being there.
Yep.
You know, all those things are fine. It just needs to be a choice.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's what it boils down to. You know, it's
Thank you for letting me
You
do
don't
that.
have a system that works for everybody all the time, but certainly some systems work better than others. And then you just have to tweak them and make the necessary adjustments so that, yes, it doesn't become the new dogma of everybody need to do it this way, where it may work best for 80% of the people, but it screws up 20% of the people. Well, you don't want to do that. Just because it works good for a majority of people, yeah, let's do it for them and figure out what we can do for the remainder. Because that's ultimately how you make good change, rather than just jumping from one partially good system to another partially good system. And that's the way it goes. Absolutely.
That's the way it goes.